Hello everyone and welcome to Blue Tengu's live game development show where we show everything that goes into making a game from concept to completion. If you've ever wanted to make a game, we hope this will help lower the barrier to entry, maybe give you the nudge you needed to try it yourself. Even if you don't want to make a game, we hope you'll find some value in what we're doing here. All of the information about where you can find us is in the Twitch info down below or in our YouTube profile for those of you catching us later. But just in case, we're at www.bluetengu.com, btengu on Twitter, Facebook.com Blue Tengu Studio, YouTube.com Blue Tengu Studio for those of you watching the live stream now, if you want to catch other episodes, and Twitch TV Blue Tengu if you're watching this later on YouTube and you want to watch the live stream someday. If you missed any episodes, you can always catch them over at YouTube, but you shouldn't have any trouble following along even if you haven't seen them. For those of you who haven't seen the show on Twitch or YouTube before, my name's Eric. I'm a game designer living over here in Japan who's trying to show you everything that goes into making a game for 2 hours a week, including all the ums and ahs and awkward debugging moments, and I always have plenty of those. The reason I'm showing it all as opposed to making the game first and scripting out a rehearsed tutorial is because I do want to help lower that barrier people feel to making a game, and I hope inspire you to go out and try it yourself if you haven't done it already. Thank you to everyone who dropped by last week, and to all of those who watched the video on YouTube in the meantime. For those of you here with me on Twitch, feel free to drop suggestions or ask me questions at any time. May not be able to answer them right away because I am working, but I'll try to get to them. And if I can't, please send me a private message here or leave a comment on our site or YouTube video, and I'll do my best to address it next time. If any of you are out there making something and you don't mind showing it off, definitely send me a link to your stuff. I'd love to see it. You can throw it in the Twitch feed, or you can throw it in a YouTube comment, or just email it through the site. Anyways, fine. Anyway, at this time, every week for 2 hours, I come to Twitch TV to work on the game Project Spaghetti, which is a top-down 2D cowboy shooter, where the bullets fired bounce around the screen with a pinball mechanic. Last week, I finished off brushing up the alien's laser attack, finally, getting it to charge up before firing, and giving the player a reasonable chance of dodging it before it just kind of popped out and killed the player, or where it popped out was kind of hard to determine, but that's all fixed now. I'll still need to prevent multiple aliens from firing at once, because that can get kind of tricky and weird and impossible for the player to dodge, but that'll be a future task for a future episode. It's going to be under the AI manager, which will tell enemies when to shoot and when to pause and stuff like that, but I'll show you that task when I get over to the task list. But today I want to give the player a little more flexibility when it comes to dodging bullets. At the moment, the only thing they can do is duck straight down and wait for the duck to end before moving again. Yeah, I want to let players do that, especially if someone's not that adept at gaming or something and they don't want to worry about rolling around and stuff like that. Easy enough to dodge, but I also want to give players who do want to try dodging a fighting chance to get out of situations where staying in place won't be enough. To do that, I need to create an option for them to kind of roll out of the way. Because this is like, very low res pixel animation, because I am kind of following Commodore 64 style, it's going to be kind of hard to show a roll per se, but maybe a dive or something like that. But the point is they'll be ducking and moving at the same time. But until I get animation in it, it'll be more like a slide out of the way, so they'll probably just drop down and slide in whatever direction. So let's jump right over to my task list here, which I keep over at Trello.com. Boom, desktop. By the way, I realized I think I left the mic on while I was prepping the episode, so if you heard anything interesting, well, enjoy it. Anyway, let's see, what should I do first? Let's go over today's goals first. Today's goals, real simple. Get the player rolling dodge working, or sliding dodge, or diving dodge, whatever it turns out to be. You can always see this task list on Trello.com. If you look up Trello and Project Spaghetti, you should be able to find it, but I keep all my tasks in here, and it is public, so anyone can look at it. You can also use this link up here, which I usually post in the YouTube video as an annotation. But today's task, real simple. Get the player to kind of slide out of the way and try to throw together a rough sprite that kind of shows that state. The thing that's going to be kind of tricky about this is not so much dodging and moving out of the way, but Let me bring up my favorite drawing tool here. The thing that's going to be tricky is you've got a player, they duck. Yes, that's a head. So they're squashed down and ducking. The thing that's going to be kind of tricky to balance is how long do I allow the player to slide, basically. Because right now, ducking, let's see, it lasts maybe a second or so. So you duck down for a second and then you pop back up. Don't want to have a situation where the player is ducking down and just at the very end of the duck, then they start to move, because that'll be kind of weird. Maybe it'll work out, but probably want to have kind of a timing thing going so that, you know, you've got the start of the duck. Let's say the start to the end of the duck is this line, like in terms of time. Then where we allow them to push like a direction key, or, you know, move the control stick and initiate a dodge might be something like this. So they can push them both at the same time to do a dodge, or they can duck and just, you know, half a second later, or a, you know, fourth of a second later or something, they can still press a directional key and kind of shift out of the way. This is going to be where this line ends is going to be pretty important to game feel. And also, if there is an animation, it's going to be kind of important to have the animation something that can work from here to here, or from here to here, etc. Which is probably why a roll is not that useful. I guess I could speed it up or something, but anyway, that's the goals for this episode. I did do some stuff in the meantime. Before last episode, I did post a link over on Tengu on Twitter, but and it's on the site. But I went through a great video from Jan from Vlambeer. I think it's called, let's see. Let me just go to my site here. bluetengu.com. Basically, yeah, right now it's at the top of the site, but The Art of Screen Shake. It's up on YouTube, but Jan from Vlambeer has this great video called The Art of Screen Shake, where he goes over like 30 different things that can really improve like a 2D game. In this case, the example he uses is, you know, a 2D side-scrolling shooter, so, you know, not all of the tips worked out for us, but, you know, I tried some experiments, like, you know, tried sleeping the screen shake, gun kickback, things like that. So if you're interested, that's over there. But the one that got implemented mainly was screen shake. Some of the other things I did in the meantime, fixed the laser clockwise counterclockwise check, and just to remind myself of how I fixed that. The problem was in the alien alarm. The check only saw if the new angle is greater than the old angle, so 14 degrees ended up being less than 350. The problem with that was the way GameMaker works. You've got, this is 0 degrees, 90, 180, 270, and theoretically this is 360, but internally it's 0. So in cases where like the player was like here when the alien started charging the laser and moved down to here, the way the code was, it was just checking if the angle was greater than. So obviously, you know, 340 degrees or whatever is going to be greater than 15 degrees. So the laser, you would expect to start sweeping this way towards the player, but it started sweeping this way. And I fixed that. Let's see what else. Lasers continue to reflect from crystals after the alien is dead. The problem with this was just setting the hit status to 1 whenever a laser collision was hitting the crystal, overriding the check to see whether the alien was still firing. That was a pretty easy fix. Some bullets get inside the alien shield. This one was an easy fix because it was a problem I had in the past too, where if you fired a bullet too close to like a bumper or a solid object, it would jump inside there because that's where the bullet would spawn and it couldn't get out. Same thing with the alien shield. So I just had the same logic I used for the bumpers, which is, I should probably just keep paintbrush out. not sure if these images are actually getting anything across, but it's like if this is the alien shield and the player fired a bullet like from the gun here, then the bullet would spawn in here and start rattling around inside the shield. So to prevent that, if the bullet is going to spawn inside of this collision, then stop the player from shooting. That's all I added to that. Firing a bullet into a blocking scorpion kind of revisited the desert level, causes problems. I fixed a lot of that stuff. Added a check. It was the exact same thing as the alien shield, because the scorpions can block from the front, so if you fire right into the scorpion, the bullet would kind of get inside their collision and they'd just be blocking forever. It'd be really weird, so I fixed that. Added a couple of, for the lasers and the shield disable, added particles to that. You'll see that when I jump into the game. Added a multiplier to the score when the levels get more difficult. This is something for the future, but, probably each time the levels kind of loop around, like old Commodore style levels or, Atari, even 2600 levels, where it just keeps getting more and more difficult as time goes on. I want to give the player at least some benefit to that, so kind of have it where every time you loop around, the points go up. And screen shake was the thing I just talked about. And enemy also changed the sprite only when the direction changes. Before, I had it where, if the enemy's kind of jiggling around on this line or whatever, let's not use that function. Because of the way pathfinding works, you can kind of end up with lines like this, where the enemy's trying to pathfind its way through the map or whatever. The problem with what I had before was, whether the enemy is facing up and right, was determined just purely by angles. Like if it was moving in this direction, for example, it would face up. If it was moving in, this direction or whatever, it would be like up and right. The problem is if this line starts to kind of jiggle back and forth between these two angles, the sprite just keeps doing this. So to fix that, what I did was to kind of overcome the current facing direction, it has to overshoot its angle. So it has to, face more up than it would normally have to face up to change the sprite in order to kind of change that sprite. So it stabilized the sprites a lot. Instead of like jiggling around on the paths, now they actually look like they've got some sense to them. And player charge shots, this is something I wanted to try for a long time, but right now, up until now, it's just been every time you push the control key, player shoots. Change that so that if you hold down the control key, you can fire up those bullets so that, the disadvantage is that you can't move while you're doing that, and it takes a little time to charge them up. The advantage is you don't have to wait for them to bounce to get up to higher levels. And added effects for that. And the last thing I did was, for the charge shot, at first I wasn't going to let players shoot out, that flashing bullet that blows out. But decided, there are some enemies where that's useful, and if they're willing to wait around for a long time to charge that up and let it go, then they should be able to. The problem was, with that bullet, when the player fires it, it's this flashing bullet that'll explode on contact, but to give it that impact, this moves a lot slower than the other bullets, so when it's just bouncing around and it changes into this state, it's the player's fault if they run into it. But if they fire it out, the problem is they can catch up to it. So to stop that, I had, if the player charges the shot up all the way and fires out one of those exploding ones, it kind of goes into that hurt state for a second. But I'll show you that when I get into the game. So let me just jump over into Game Maker Studio. I've been chatting here for way too long, and show you where we're at. So Game Maker Studio is what I use. I'm at version 1.4 right now. By the time you watch this video, I have no idea what version you'll be using or what versions will be out, but at least at the time of this, it's 1.4. 0.1474. Okay. So let's show the charge shot then first. So I'm holding down the control key. And there's an example of him firing out the charged shot, the one that explodes. If he just fires out like a regular charged shot, then he doesn't do that whole like dropping down thing. It's just because 2, 3, 4, 5. As you can see, that bullet moves really, really slow. So the player could theoretically shoot it and catch up to it, which is why I had to stop that. The other thing I added, like I mentioned, is the screen shake. Every time he fires, the screen just kind of jiggles there. Gives a little more impact to the bullets. And that is definitely courtesy of the Vlambeer lecture. Very good advice. So, jumping over here. So the first thing to do is actually let the player dodge out of the way of stuff. So, to do that, I'm going to have to start fiddling with the player object. And after all that chatting, I probably should have a drink of water so I don't throw my voice out. I turned on the heater because it was a little cold this morning, so it may dry me out a little faster than usual. So the dodge is right now on the space key. And all it does now is, sets the dodge cooldown to 0, which means the player can't keep dodging. And it sets the dodge state to 1, which is what causes the sprite to duck down and for like bullets not to affect the player even when they collide. So let's see, what am I gonna need to do for this? Since the 4 actions the player can do are left, up, right, and down, whatever I add is gonna have to be in here. Let me think. I should probably list this stuff up. First thing I'm probably going to have to do is create global constant for, what would I call it, the acceptance for dodge, directional acceptance, something like that. Just that line that I showed for how long the player can actually dodge. That'll be the easiest thing, because it's just creating a variable. After that, it's going to be start an alarm in dodge that triggers on that global constant. So if I set it for half a second, then an alarm will trigger after half a second. In the alarm, needs to switch a flag, which means I'm going to need to, when the player hits space, so in the dodge, switch a flag to accept input. So this will be a true-false thing. So ordinarily it's false, but as soon as the player dodges, it's set to true, so that for at least until this time runs out, they can put in a direction. The last thing I'm going to need to do is actually have them move. This is setting horizontal speed, so it's not going to be so much speed, but because I don't want them to just be able to slide forever. I just want them to be able to just kind of do an instant shift. So if dodging left, right, up, down, move the character a fixed distance. So if they choose right, they can slide right. And because I don't want them to just keep, sliding over and over again, I probably need to undo that flag. So switch the accept directional input flag back off. These are kind of a set. I think if I do all that, it should be okay. And Pandavit's dropped by. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for dropping by. Mentioned at the start of the show, what I'm doing this show is working on the player dodge so that they no longer just dodge in place, but they actually dodge out of the way if the player wants them to. So I'm just listing up right now what I need to do to make that happen. And all this stuff is going to be in a player object. So let's see. Let's get started just step by step. Easiest way to go about it. First thing is, in the dodge, switch a flag to accept directional input. So, as always, I need to put the flag in here to make sure that it always exists. Player dodge input, normally false. And one thing I keep forgetting to do for the player is I want to reset all these variables when a room starts or finishes, so let's pop that in there too. Okay, so player dodge input is false by default, which means if the player hits left, right, up, or down, it's not going to do anything with dodge. But if this is true, then it will. So for setting it to true, I need to put that in here, inside the dodge. Oop. Player dodge input true. And just so I remember what this is months later, put that in there. And this is space, which is the dodge. The only thing the dodge checks is to make sure that the player is actually able to dodge before doing the dodge, so I need to put that in here. The next thing, let's see, it should be a global constant for dodge directional acceptance. This is in seconds. All my constants are up here in resources, define macros, basically the game maker equivalent of constants. And PandaBits in the chat says, writing an exam right now. It's online and open book, so this isn't cheating. So it might be as chatty for a little while. Well, good luck on your exam. Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you for watching, even while you're taking a test. You're a soldier. Well, good luck on your exam. If you do have time to chat, what kind of exam are you taking, if you don't mind letting the world know? Let's see. Player dodge. By the way, any of you guys out there who are just kind of lurking, I don't check your names or anything like that, so I don't, give shout outs if you just want to lurk and kind of stay in the background. But if you do want to say hi, just say hi in the chat. Definitely leave that up to you guys, because I know, like, when I jump into a Twitch channel and I'm like the only one there, it's like, I don't know, he's gonna probably start chatting me up, and it's like I only wanted to watch for 5 minutes or something. So don't worry, I don't do that stuff. Player dodge limit. Player dodge move limit. That's pretty clear. And let's see. It's probably going to be something really small because most players are going to move the direction right after they dodge. Let's try 0.2 seconds. If it's too much, I can always tail it back, but need to start somewhere. So player dodge move limit. Oh, okay. Modern Chinese history is the exam. Well, good luck. There's definitely a lot of history to cover. It's very interesting. Back in school, like, I took Japanese history and Korean history, but I never did get to Chinese history, so kind of jealous. It sounds like a very interesting class. Let's see. Next thing is start an alarm in dodge that triggers on that global constant. I need to use an alarm that doesn't exist yet, so let's see. 5 looks good. Alarm number 5. This will be the dodge alarm. Dodge input cutoff. So when this alarm triggers, the player is no longer able to dodge, which means I reset this player dodge input to false. And that's all that does. Let's see, what else? If the player's dodging, does anything happen? Explosions don't affect. Yeah, okay. Players can dodge explosions, so I don't need to worry about that. I was just kind of worried if the player, is in a dodge state and an explosion knocks them out of it, then they can just never dodge again, or they're always able to do this weird dodge roll or something. That's not the case. Since I created a new alarm, one other thing I have to be careful of every time is when the room ends to cancel all of the alarms, because otherwise when they move on to a new stage, something weird's going to happen. So -1 cancels the alarm. Inside the alarm, I'm changing that to false. So now I just need to trigger the alarm, which is in here. And alarm 5 times room speed. In GameMaker, room speed is the number of frames per second, so if you multiply anything by this, it gives you the ability to say seconds instead of frames. And this can be changed, so it's a good idea never to put like frames in here, because if you change the frame rate of your game, it'll throw everything off. Seems pretty logical, but even like big studio games, like when the programmers are getting kind of pushed to get things done quickly, that's one thing they do kind of skip sometimes, assuming that the frame rate's going to stay the same. Which is usually fine for that game, but for example, over the past like 10 years, there's been a big push for, bringing old games back out on new systems or with new updates and things like that. So if your old game was like 30 frames per second, and now that you've brushed it up and the systems are more powerful, you want it to run at 60 frames per second, if you were doing something like this the whole time, then it just happens automatically and everything works fine, except for maybe like your animations and stuff. But if you don't do this, then you have to go through all of these parts of code and figure out, well, this says, let's see, it was 10 seconds, so that's 10 times 30, 300. That's why I have 300 in here. But if I want it to be 60 frames, I need 600. You wouldn't have to worry about any of that stuff. Not that I expect to have like an HD version of this game in the future, but if I do want to change the frame rate at some point, good idea. Okay, so now I probably have that flag moving back and forth appropriately. So let's just check these off. That's there, that's there, that's there, that's there. So the last thing is to actually have this do something, which means going into left, right, up, and down. Keyboard check, VK right is not true. Okay, yeah, so if you're not pushing the left and right keys at the same time, which I probably need to do for dodging as well, because you have to assume that it's a mistake on the player's part, otherwise it's just going to feel kind of weird. Well, not necessarily a mistake. Sometimes, like if you're in a game, you want to change direction and your finger's still on the old key or something. So now I just need to have another if in here. So if maybe it's not in here, because this sets the horizontal speed to that, but I'm counteracting movement somewhere. Maybe step. Yeah, if the player is currently dodging, stop moving. So I do need to fix this. And PL. Well, let's make this easy. Let's make this real easy. This is fine. We'll leave this alone. But let's make an else in here. If PL dodge. What did I say? Limit? PL dodge input. Okay. PL dodge input. So if PL dodge input is true, I know GameMaker knows how to interpret these like one equal signs to be equivalents, but it freaks me out. My C++ kind of background kind of comes out in places like this. Though GameMaker does know what to do with that stuff. Let's see, else Okay. And just so I know what this is, like 10 years from now, if the dodge is accepting player input, and I do need to add a few more cases here, just in case. Let's see, player dodge is 1. Yeah, I guess I could probably get away with just player dodge being 1. Just in case. I mean, dodge input should only be true if the player's dodging, but on the off chance that, you know, getting hit by a bullet while dodging or while entering a dodge that 1 frame or something screws things up, let's just add this little extra bit of insurance so that now I know the player is dodging and it's accepting dodge input. If you haven't noticed, I stutter a lot. That's just me. Okay, so let's see. Panabits mentions that's mostly a problem for Unreal engines and ones that deal with frame-based calculations. Going back to the frame rate issue, yeah, but GameMaker also has frame rate as well, so it would affect this game if you said like 300 frames or whatever. I think usually GameMaker defaults new projects to 60 frames per second, but you can lower it to 30 or whatever. But definitely like Unreal, Unity, any of those, you're going to set the frame rate, and that's going to determine how everything in your game works and how fast it moves, how fast it checks things, how fast input lag is, and all that stuff. So any project that involves frame rate, you should probably always have some constant somewhere that just says what your frame rate is, so you can always multiply by that. Okay, so in this case, if the player's dodging, it's accepting input, and they do have something going, then I don't want to do this. Actually, no, I don't have to worry about stopping speed, do I? I don't know. I don't know how GameMaker does this stuff, to be honest. What I'm wondering is if, because what I'm planning on doing is having it move, you know, a set number of pixels to the right, down, up, or upright, and stuff like that. What I'm wondering is if I do this, but I overwrite with set horizontal speed to 0, if it'll stop this or not. May not have to worry about it. So actually, let's get rid of this. Sorry, that was about 2 minutes of viewing time that comes to nothing, but I may not need to do that. So I'll get rid of it for now. At the beginning of the step, this is fine. End step, if the player is moving, set the new. Yeah, that's just for laser stuff. So the thing that's actually doing the moving is what? I need to find that. Any key. Yeah, that's fine. That's player direction. I just realized I'm still using numbers in here. But up, left, 7. Yeah, I just need to replace these with constants while I'm thinking about it. Just in case I change the system later and forget all about this. Down left. Up right. Down right. DR left. No, there's no K direction yet. DR right. DR up. DIR down. All this is for determining the right sprite to draw, so that's not that important. Set vertical speed. Yeah, I guess I do have to do something in here. Well, since right is the easiest one for me to think of because it's just adding to x, if this is true, So if they're not hitting two keys at the same time, then I need to do an if check in here. If they're not, if dodge input is not active, then business as usual. Let's do it that way. I think that'll work. So as long as dodge input is false, it'll set the horizontal speed. If they're dodging, then the dodge state will cancel out that horizontal speed later. I hope. And else. So if dodge input is true, then I want something to happen, namely jump a few pixels. Okay, let's see, how do we go about this? I guess for now, no, it has to be a little more complicated. Because there's always the chance that the player could try to dodge and shift to the right when there's like a barrel or something in the way, so I have to keep track of that stuff. And one thing I did do for like the Vlambeer video like testing is tried out knockback. And so I can get a hint from here on how I do this. Because I did the same thing for knockback. Like if a bullet knocks the player back, I wanted to make sure that the player didn't get knocked into like a solid object or something, that it would stop when it hit that object. And to do that, I need to use place free to check to make sure that each place is free along the way until it reaches that jump limit, and then slide them in there. To show what that is, hop over to paintbrush again and have one of my obscure cave paintings. So let's say there's a barrel here, and ordinarily the player can dodge this far, but there's a barrel here, so I want him to dodge only this far. So what this code will do is it'll check, pixel by pixel, is this place free? Okay, that's fine. Move that far. Is this place free? Is this place free? And so on until it gets no, and then it just moves the player here. So that's the logic behind this. So it's going to be something like this. If I'm only thinking about right, I only have to worry about the right direction. But I may have to worry about something else as well, which is what happens if the up and down keys are pressed as well, because theoretically you want them to move in the same distance regardless of direction, which means this is what you would expect. So if I don't keep track of up down when I'm checking like dodging to the right, what I'll end up with is a dodge that goes out to here. So I do need to worry about that. So I guess I should have a keyboard check in here. For up or down. So if there's also vertical movement, and it seems ridiculous that I have to check this as well, but there's always the case that they're pressing up and down at the same time, which means there's no vertical movement. So I do have to worry about that, which would be if keyboard check VK up and keyboard check VK down. So I don't want that. And tie these together with a nice little and. Yeah, just so the logic doesn't get confused here. So if up or down is pushed and not both at the same time, that means the player is going to be moving vertically, which means one thing, and if they're not moving vertically, it means the simple thing. So to borrow from this, the simple state is if they're going to the right, that means it has to add something. So I need another constant, which determines the dodge distance. Dodge move distance, let's say 8 pixels. That might be way too much, but let's think about 8 for now. Should always make this an even number because I'm going to have to divide by 2 in some cases. So PL dodge move distance. Since I can't put comments in here, what I do is I always go over to here and add stuff. Just so that later when I'm looking through this constant list, I know what all these things do. And because this is scaled up based on resolution, it's not always going to be pixels. It's just going to be pixels at the very base. Sorry, letting my voice dry out there. Because I chat too much, obviously. A number of pixels to dodge. Okay. Player dodge move distance. Okay. So now, and then I have to change this to less than and plus plus. Okay. So X is the player's current X position. While these two things are true, the first one's obviously going to be true because there's not going to be any collision there in the first place if the player is able to be there. So the second step through, it'll basically increment X, 1 pixel at a time basically, which is this I++. And again, do the check to make sure there's no collision there. Do the check to make sure there's no collision there until I reach this, dodge move distance. And this I will return me how far the player actually got to move. And J equals. I could just put these at the top. Don't need to do this every time, because this will be the same regardless of what happens. Okay. So that's that case. And I'm probably going to want animation in here, but for now, just to keep it simple, I'm not going to worry about animation yet. All I'm going to do is update the X coordinate to the new dodge coordinate. That's just going to be the same. Don't really need to do that, but just to keep consistent, because I'll be copying and pasting this script. Actually, I do need to do that because of this. So if there is also vertical movement, then I need to do this twice. First, I need to check X distance, which is exactly the same. Let's just always use J. Makes it easier. And then I also need to do it for Y. Let's see, if keyboard check up. Let's just split this else, this if up. Because I need to know whether it's going up or down, I guess. Do I? No, I shouldn't be doing this in here. Sorry. Yeah, I shouldn't be doing that in here. What should I do when there's two keys at the same time? First thing to do is to have this distance if there's vertical movement. That's easy enough to think about. The only thing I'm wondering about now is when to update these. Because if up and down are going, or if up and right are going at the same time, there might be some weirdness going on with this. So I think I need to pull this out a little bit. Begin step. Instead of I and J, I guess I'll put a variable in there. Player dodge X and player dodge Y. It's just set to Y by default. So if I go in here, I don't need to worry about that. Player dodge X. Wherever I had X, I should have that. Yeah, okay. I'm starting to sense that I shouldn't be doing this in each of these left, right, up, down keys. I should be doing it in any key. That's my problem. That's my problem. Let's do it there. Dodge is 1 and player dodge input is true. Then do this stuff. Because if I'm checking any key, then I can do all these checks in one place. That's the way to go. Okay. So we can get rid of all of this. Okay, put right back to normal, and then in here, if the player is dodging and player dodge input is true, then go through all the dodge calculations. Okay, I think this will do it. And Panabits mentions, sorry, just finished, so I missed it, but if you're trying to determine how the player will dodge with 2 keys to press, why not check which button was pressed first? Can't really do that in Game Maker Studio because it can register 2 at the same time. I had that problem in the very beginning when I was, episode like 1 or 2 or so, when I was getting the player to move. Tried to do things where it was like which one was pressed first and stuff like that. It didn't work out, so I had to do, something in the end that kind of checked all that stuff. And Panabits mentioned, or is that impossible since it doesn't log inputs? Yeah, that's the problem. It doesn't log inputs. You can't assume anything in GameMaker, unfortunately. So, and I guess if someone's like super fast, then maybe they can actually push things at the same time in the same frame. So let's do it this way. If keyboard check VK up. So if up, and do the same thing for right. So if there's up movement, so I can get rid of this keyboard down check. And simplify that. Okay, so if up is pushed and down is not pushed, that means the player wants upward movement. Then I have to determine if there is also right movement. also left movement. And I might be able to simplify this even more, but no, don't want to do that. Because of the collision checks, I think I don't want to simplify anything. So if there's also right movement, that means the player is pushing right and not pushing left at the same time. Same with this for left movement, just need to switch left and right. And the final case is there's no movement. So either the player's not pushing left and right, or they're pressing them both at the same time, which means there's no horizontal movement. This is the easy case. So I only have to worry about up. And I could go back to using I and J, but PL dodge x equals x, PL dodge y equals y. And I can get rid of those variables from where I put them before, since I don't need to do this anymore. Okay. Right. And actually this needs to be a y. And in GameMaker, going up is a minus, so this actually needs to be minus. Greater than minus. Okay, so if the player's moving up, check pixels in the up direction. The trickier ones are going to be in here. Up still kind of works the same, except that this has to be divided by 2. So that they don't super dodge in diagonal directions. Otherwise, the upward movement's still the same. And let's see, your dodge y is greater than that. Do I even need to check player dodge x? I may not have to do the check. Because if they're always going to move in a straight diagonal line, then whatever y goes up by is also going to be what x goes up by. I'm not sure if it's dangerous to make that assumption or not. Let's play it safe. Add another check in here. Which says do the exact same thing except for with x as well. Just in case. I need some more parentheses in here so I don't freak out. Don't want to take chances with parentheses either. Hopefully I got enough. Let's see, that pairs up with that, so I need one more there. That's fine. Let's see what this parenthesis pairs up with. That goes to that, that goes to that, that goes to that. And I don't need a parentheses for that one. Okay. So just playing it safe, checking to make sure that the player hasn't moved beyond the maximum dodge distance in either the x direction or the y direction. and checking to make sure that the place is free. If it is, then increment. Okay, good. I think that's good for that. Now it's just copy and paste time. So now it's going to be for left movement. The only thing that's going to change with going left is that it's now going in the minus x direction, which means this has to go minus minus. And that covers upward movement, so now we need a big copy and paste for that. So if there's downward movement, which means you're pressing down and not up at the same time. Right movement, left movement, no horizontal movement. That's all the same. The only thing that needs to change in this case is the y stuff, because now y is going in the plus direction because it's going down. So plus plus, plus, plus plus, and finally plus plus. Okay. So for left and right, I only need to handle if as long as I use an else if, then I don't need to worry about verticals because I've already got that case covered in here. So if there was no upward movement or downward movement, but there is left movement, then do something like this. Left is going minus, so that need to switch the signs here. And the last check if there's right movement. Okay, VK rights. Not pushing left at the same time. And because it's going right, X is going to be positive. And that should cover me. So I've got up right, up left, up, down right, down left, down, left, right. There's my 8 directions. And the last thing I need to do is update X and update Y to the new coordinates. That was a handful, but let's see if it works. Dodge. Movement. So if dodge is true and that, alright, well, let's see what happens. I added a whole bunch of stuff to the game, so I'll probably get, like, some kind of bug when I try to start it up. I forgot to define some variable or other. Well, that's extremely unhelpful. Compile failed, alright. Where did it fail? Key, any key. Okay, I see. I forgot a bracket somewhere. Which means I forgot it here. Do my checks for brackets. Oh, it feels like I have all my brackets. Is it because I'll bet it's that. That's why. Okay. Forgot a parentheses. And since I forgot them everywhere, I might as well just add them everywhere. So they should all have 3 at the end. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay. That should at least get me past that compile error. Yeah, PandaBits mentions exactly. Wow, the compile failed. Check this blank box for error. Exactly. That's not very helpful. Not sure why GameMaker's kind of screwing up like that. It has error input down here in this this compile source window at the very bottom, which is probably being cut off by the bottom of the screen. But malformed while statement is the next problem. It says. At least I think that's the one. Hard to tell when it doesn't give me a message in the window, but my while statements are screwy. Yeah, this is one of those awkward debugging moments. At least it's just parentheses and stuff, which is easy enough to solve. Where was I? Any key? Okay, where's my wall? Why is my wall malformed? I have missing parentheses here too. Sigh. Yeah, in that case it's fine. It's just this one, I guess. Okay. So let's just make sure I have all my parentheses, dot all my I's, cross all my T's, throw all my parentheses in there. Okay. Here we go. Next is symbol bracket expected, something bad. I wish you could see this error message. I can't expand this window out for whatever reason, but let me see if I can shrink it down and show you what's going on here. Something bad. Line 66, something bad. That's interesting. Line 66, something bad's happening. Well, there's obviously nothing going wrong with line 66, which means there's a parentheses or something off somewhere here. Okay. Guess I do need to add them in those ones too. Well, yeah, that one's not paired with anything. What's going on here? Why is it only the X ones that needed extra ones? No, that should be fine. No, those are fine. Guess we'll just have to kind of check them one by one, just to make sure that everything's paired up. If keyboard checked, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Those pair up, those pair up. Yeah, I'll just throw the extra parentheses in there just for the heck of it. That's fine, 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 fine. I wonder how many hours around the world are wasted every day because of parentheses. I mean, obviously there's no other way to do it, but... And just in case, add those. That's fine, that's fine. That has its pair. That has a pair. That's up. Alright, add parentheses here just in case. parentheses just in case. Yeah, I didn't fix anything, so I don't see how this would help. But let's see if that was enough. I doubt it will be because I didn't actually fix anything. Yeah, it's saying line 66, unexpected symbol and expression. And it's expecting all these extra brackets. So what the heck am I missing? It's not the not stuff, is it? Line 66, else if. Yeah, that's very unhelpful. Unexpected something. Ah, son of a... Okay. This will be almost impossible to see in the video, but this character is a colon instead of a semicolon. Okay. Ah, Jiminy. That's awesome. I wish he could have just said, this line has something weird in it, check it, rather than waiting all the way to line 60-something, but can't really blame the parser, have to blame myself for that one. Until we get Terminators and HAL 9000s, I think I'm just going to have to deal with finding my own mistakes. Okay, well, we got it started. Hope you enjoyed that and awkward debugging moment. Let's see if it actually dodges. I'm sure I'll get some other error when I dodge and try to move, but... Okay, let me turn off the enemy attacks here and get rid of them. Okay, so I've turned off the enemy attacks and made my player invincible through some debug keys. And it looks like it's actually working, surprisingly. If I duck and then try to move, like after 0.2 seconds, I can't slide out of the way. But if I duck and then kind of slide right away, I can kind of do that. And I can also do kind of a moving slide, which is giving me way too much distance. As opposed to like when I duck and slide, which is the proper 8 pixels. And Panovitz mentions, yeah, I guess something bad is when they don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it's about all it can do. If I ever make a compiler, I'll have to remember that one. And then Panovitz mentions, BioWare probably spent a few years staring at code while they were putting Dragon Age into Frostbite. Yeah, I'm sure they did. I'm sure missing parentheses in that would have been no joke. Okay, so now I just need to figure out why the running slide is so powerful. Although that's kind of a cool effect. I don't know. It's a cool effect, but it's a little too much. Let me just make sure the dodge actually stops at barrels too. Okay, good. So it's handling collision properly. I'm glad to see it's actually working mostly properly. So the only thing I have to do, let's see, got that done, is stop the super slide when moving, then dodging. Let me see. I may know what the problem is. I think I know what the problem is. I need to unset that flag because right now, for that 0.2 seconds, For that 0.2 seconds where the player is able to move and dodge at the same time, they can dodge as much as they want in those 0.2 seconds. I don't want that to be the case. I want them to just be able to do it once. So which means I have to set the flag in here. So if any of these values are changed, I need to set that player dodge input to false. Let me just make sure it is called player dodge input. For some reason I keep thinking it might be something else, but I think that's it. Player dodge input, yes. Let me not do that. And it is a semicolon this time, so it should work. So player dodge input false. Just need to add it into all 8 directions. Okay. That should prevent that sliding dodge. The dodge should behave the same way every time now. But we'll find out. Oops, that was shoot. I turned off the enemy attacks again. Yep. Yeah, the only thing is 8 pixels is not much. So I probably do need to increase that. It's not a very useful dodge of just 8 pixels, so let's try 12. It's going to look wonky until I get like animation and stuff going, but turn off player attacks. Because theoretically I want this guy to be able to move completely out of the way of the bullet, regardless of what their sprite is doing. So probably rather than using just 12 or something like that, what I should be using is the sprite size, or specifically the sprite collision size. Which in this case is, let's see, from 8 to 15. Let's do some calculations here. Well, 15 minus 8, 7. 18 minus 2, 16. So as you can see, the character collision is much taller than it is wide, which means I should probably adjust the dodge value based on this. Yeah, because if the player dodges at a diagonal, they're probably going to end up still hitting the bullet. So having that may not be such a great idea. Yeah, exactly. Pandabits mentions dodging up is a bit because it looks like you don't get out of the way exactly. Probably want a case where dodging at least gets you out of the trouble that you're thinking about. So if this is your sprite collision, actually it is aux, so let's do it this way. If this is the collision aux, for example, and the bullet is coming in this way, you want to at least be able to dodge this much, or that much, or that much, or that much. And I don't want to do diagonals so that you can dodge into this safe zone, because then otherwise, you know, what's the point in dodging left, right, up, and down? It's always better to dodge in diagonals because it gives you more of a chance to escape. So I don't want to do that. So I do want to keep this, having it. But this is probably what the player would expect. Obviously not a bunch of boxes on the screen, but probably in terms of, you know, if they dodge up and to the right, they're going to end up in this box. If they dodge right, they're going to end up in this box. You know, something like that. Actually, that's kind of cool. I'll keep that one. Let's see. So to do that, I need to dodge right and left the size of the player collision and up and down the size of the player collision in terms of these numbers. And for diagonals, I'm going to have to get kind of clever, I suppose. Well, no, I don't have to get clever, thankfully, because I'm not very clever in the first place. So 7 divided by 2 plus 1. Well, round up. Just to be a little fair to the player. 16 divided by 2. Oh, there's no rounding on that one. Okay, so for diagonals, I want to do something like that. And for straights, I want to do something like that. Which means I do need to split that dodge distance out into 2 constants. Let me save my notes here, just in case I accidentally close them. And I think I do have a global variable that keeps track of the player's width and stuff like that. Let's see, PL, global standard width. There we go. That's for sprite width, though. I want the collision. Okay, I'm going to think about this for a little bit, but I do need to take a break so I can grab some water. So I am going to throw on the usual show, but Pandabits, before I go into break, mentioned for the left-right dodge, might want to make it a bit larger. If you want to dodge towards the bullet, you need to be comfortable you won't land short. Yeah, you don't want to dodge like right into the bullet. And if you're going to force the player to stand at the end of the dodge, yeah, exactly. Need to make it as safe as possible so that it's actually a reasonable mechanic. Right now, obviously, you know, the player's just going to end up getting themselves killed if they try to use it, the same as, you know, just dodging in the first place. It's probably even more dangerous than dodging just down. But I'm going to take a break, which means I'm going to show the animated short, just so that, yep, the rest of you know. It's going to be about 8 minutes, which will be my break. Be back at the end of it. It shows what happened last week, opening credits, and the actual episode, which changes. So don't be thrown off by the opening credits. It is a different episode than last week. Thank you for pointing that out last week, Pandabits, because it could be kind of confusing. So I'm going to show that. For those of you watching this on YouTube, it's what you saw at the beginning of the episode. But I use it to cover my tracks in Twitch when I need to take a break. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be back in 9 minutes. Thank you for waiting while I took that break. I am back, and while I was away, Pandabits mentioned that Zelda, for example, uses a unique system for getting around the width and height differences by having a hop be like the sideways one and then the roll be the forwards one. That's actually a really good idea. Might have to do something like that for this because the distances are going to be different, so it probably should have a different animation. By the way, my laptop here is catching up to the chat because I think a lot of you probably, if you've been on Twitch, you realize that the Adobe Flash Player had some kind of exploit or something in it, and it requires you to upgrade and all that. So I was doing that in the meantime, but I think it's back just in time. I guess I'm glad it made a long animation there because it covered me upgrading my Flash version on the side. Did also look up that GameMaker does have a function for getting the bounding box as opposed to the entire sprite. It's called sprite get bbox bottom, I think it's bottom top. Yeah, top right, left bottom. So what I can do to get the width of that collision, that player collision, is using this stuff. At least so that the player can move out of the way, but I may not need to be this tricky because I probably do want the player to have a little bit of breathing room anyway. So like for example, this is the bounding box, whereas this is the sprite width. So using that as a base is not a bad idea, except that there's a lot more cushion on the sides, and I might in the future get rid of a lot of that cushioning, obviously to save on memory and stuff, because if it's just a bunch of blank pixels, I don't really need it. So I guess I will use the bounding box as a base and then just maybe multiply it by 2 or 4 or something like that. Hopefully my chat is okay. If it's not, I do have a backup over here that I can check. Looks like it's okay. What this sprite get bbox does is, in terms of the game window itself, it gets you the coordinates of the upper left, the upper right, assuming that the upper left is 0, and then right is from there and down is from there. So if you want to get the width of the actual collision, you just have to subtract these things. So if you subtract top from bottom, you can get the collision size is 74, for example. So let's do that. Oh, actually, they do exactly that here. Didn't even look at the sample code, but that's exactly what they're doing in the sample. Getting the width and height based on subtracting, which is what I'm going to do. So, player, I guess the collision's not really going to change, so I can do that here, just when I start the player up. PL collision width, and width is just going to be that, basically. So boom, I have collision width in there. That should be okay. And I never change the collision box regardless of what the player is doing, whether they're dodging or jumping or shooting or whatever they're doing. Never change it, because otherwise it'd cause problems where certain actions can get the player stuck in a solid object or something. Don't want that to happen. And a little more copy and pasting. Now that's for the height. So now I have collision width and collision height to work with. So I can go back in here into dodge movement. And let's see. So PL dodge move distance. May not need to use that anymore. Because I am dividing it up now. But I may change it to a different variable, like a multiple or something. Yeah, I don't want to use height by mistake there. If it's X, it's got to be width. If it's Y, it's got to be height. That's going to be height. Yeah, that is width. I don't need to change that one. And height. While I'm doing the copy and pasting, I should throw out a question to you guys. Are any of you doing anything special for holidays or New Year's, depending on which one you celebrate, or anything else? If you don't mind, let me know. Because don't really do much celebrating around here for Christmas. I guess that, Japan does get into Christmas to some extent. But definitely nowhere near like back home in the States. So I'm just kind of curious if you guys have anything cool planned. Let's see, width, make sure I have the right widths and heights in the right places, because that'll be difficult to debug if I don't get that right. And I'm going to change this global variable to something different. Instead of distance, I'm going to call it factor. And I'm going to try 3. And just so I remember what this is later, because factor could mean anything, let's change that here. The multiple to apply to collision with height for dodging. That's pretty clear. So years from now, if I'm looking back on this, I should be able to figure it out from that. And I also need to use that here. And I need to multiply in here, which means more parenthesis fun. Lovely. Love parentheses. Love them. If I didn't want all these parentheses, I suppose I could set up a different variable that holds these two things with the multiple thrown in it, but yeah, don't really need to do that. Save me a variable, I guess, worth of memory. Something tells me I forgot one of the parentheses here. Yeah. Yeah, there should always be 2 in front, 4 in the back. Okay. Yeah, 4 if there's a divide, otherwise 2 or 3. And let's see, Pandavit says, for the Christmas holidays and holiday season, hanging out with some friends. All went to different universities after high school, so we only really meet up around this time. But it's nice to see friends. Yeah, exactly. What I hear, that's definitely the best part about Christmas, is being able to go back home and see friends and stuff like that. That's definitely the part I miss about that. I'm just noticing now, because there's so much light finally streaming in from the outside, that there's a bit of fuzziness behind me, so I'm just going to fix that really quick. Boom. As you can see, the green screen, magic. There. Just wanted to fix that because, it's no big secret that I'm using a green screen, obviously, but, I think it'll bug some people if there's just this weird kind of fuzziness around, so I wanted to get rid of that. But, yeah, definitely miss, going home, seeing family and stuff. Like, even when I was at university, it was kind of nice to go back home and just do nothing for a while, too, but see, like, old high school friends. And Panabit says, from what I hear of Japan, Reddit, trashy shoujo manga. They don't do a lot, but it does snow and they look up in the sky for like 5 minutes. Yeah, the standard like anime shoujo manga thing of whoa, looking up at the sky. Yeah, I guess some people would do that, especially if it starts snowing, because it doesn't snow that much in Tokyo anyway, but the rest of Japan it's snowing like crazy. The place called Tokushima, one of the islands, like you've got, sorry to diverge from game development, but got to do it once in a while. If you've got Japan looking kind of like this for the main island, you've got an island, this is Honshu, this is Kyushu, this is Shikoku, this is Hokkaido, but Tokyo's here, I'm around here, but this area got hit by snow really bad, like to the point where like entire villages were just cut off from like roads and stuff for a while. They had to send in like the self-defense forces, the equivalent of the National Guard, and get things cleared away. But so it does definitely snow in certain places, and people do look up at the sky and go, "Oh," a lot. And also from like your manga reading, in different genres, bald men who perform a basic fitness routine destroy aliens in a single punch. Dragon Ball. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some distortions of reality going on with manga, but that never happens in like American cartoons either, right? But definitely hope you enjoy your holiday season. I guess if you're taking your exam now, that must mean you're about to go on break, so I hope you have a nice break. Get back to this. Sorry for that side diversion. Uh, hope you don't mind too much. I like chatting with you guys because otherwise it does feel like I'm just kind of in a room here by myself and just chilling here. Okay, I'm just going to check these parentheses to make sure I got them all right. I don't want to have another random, like, something went wrong compiling error, especially after that. Okay, I forgot to do something. Height, width, width. Oh, did I get it right? Let's see, x and width, y and height, y height, width, width, height. Yeah, I guess I did that all right. So it's just the parentheses I need to check. Make sure that these things are always blue at the end. At least GameMaker does do that for you. It checks to make sure that you have things matching up to your parentheses. So that should be okay. Let's see how it works in game. Yeah, obviously there was a parenthesis somewhere. 82. Well, that's nice. Very helpful. I guess that'll teach me to chat while I throw parentheses in something. Apparently, adding parentheses is akin to like brain surgery. 1 minus that, that. Yeah, I have too many parentheses in here, don't I? Let's see. That covers multiplying the height by the factor. That covers dividing it by 2. That covers subtracting it. That covers that. So I think I have one too many here, don't I? So whatever I do in one place, I probably did in all the places. That one's fine. I mean, having too many parentheses shouldn't matter as long as there's a pair to it, but maybe it does. Minus. Well, I'll cut out the extra ones just in case. No point in having too many. That should be fine. Yeah, lovely. Well, let's see if that fixed it. I doubt it will because it's just extra parentheses, so it should just ignore that. Yeah, I didn't think so. Not that lucky. Malformed while statement. Well, it's definitely having a problem with the while statement. Love parentheses. And I seem to be having a problem with this one. This one or the one before this one? Okay. There's one problem. That was one parenthesis in the wrong place. Maybe that's just the one that is causing the problem. Have it around the wrong thing. That was one of the places where I was being chatty, so that's no good. 82 still. Yeah, I'll expand this to fill out the whole screen in case it helps. Y minus that divided by 2. Yeah, I suspect it's going to be one of these last ones. Now those all look fine. Maybe it is one of these ones then. So that's multiplying it. And then dividing it by 2. That's subtracting it from y. That's giving me true or false. Let's check the ones on the right, I guess. So if I'm dividing by 2, there should always be 2 parentheses there. Looks like I've got all that lined up properly. I don't think I did a semicolon colon thing again. Let me just check just to make sure. I don't think so. Okay, that's fine. What am I missing? Well, alright, let's go old school with this. And do that. Since GameMaker is not going to be very helpful in helping me pin this down, what I just have to do is just comment out blocks and just see what works and doesn't work. Because if this compiles, that means there's no problem up here. If it doesn't compile, that means there's a problem up here at least. So it'll help me pin things down. Okay, so there is a problem up there, which means there's probably a problem everywhere. So let's pin it down even further. I guess this is the good thing about taking computer science back in college. You learn how to do this the hard way, because you end up taking a lot of like languages and stuff where there aren't any fancy debuggers or anything else that go with it, so you do have to kind of do things manually sometimes. Actually, let's keep this commented out for now, and let's comment out some chunks in here. So let's comment out this chunk too. Oh, better not do that. And I better remember to take that away. Otherwise, I'm going to create another error. Okay, so the first one is fine. Feels good, pinning it down. The first one is fine. So now let's expand this out. Get rid of that before I forget. Let's try that one. And yeah, there's a lot of fail states for code, but not a lot where something doesn't work without crashing exactly. GameMaker is not being very helpful with that stuff. So it's that last state that's causing the problem. And Pandavits mentions One Punch Man if they took all the fighting of DBZ and removed it, leaving only the ridiculous antagonists and posturing. Let me look that up. It does kind of look like Kuririn or something from Dragon Ball. Okay, I'll have to check that. I'll have to check that out. That looks really weird. Awesome. Okay, I'll keep that for later. Save that for later. Thank you for letting me know about One Punch Man. Didn't even know about that manga. Let's see, get back into this stuff. Okay, so the if and the else if are working fine. The problem is in this else. So whatever I'm doing wrong in here. I don't need these two. That's overkill. But I do need one here. And that one goes to the end. Okay, that was definitely a problem. Let's see if I'm doing the same problem in other places too. May not be. So I've got two parentheses, 1, 1, 3. So I've got 2, 1, 1, 3, 2, 1, 1, 3. Okay, that might be the only spot I have the problem in. Let's find out. Never actually clicked the show information button before. There we go. Okay, it was just a misplaced parentheses. So another and awe and awkward debugging moment later, and we're in the game. The dodge should be a different distance, left and right and up and down. Yeah, it's way too much now, so it's probably just that factor. Let's get rid of that. Let's move this down to just 1 for now. Because that multiple is probably causing problems. Left-right dodging doesn't seem to be working. Let's try diagonals. Okay, up-down doesn't seem to be working properly anymore. Let's make sure I've got my variables right. Player collision width, player collision height. Left minus right. Guess I should make sure that's actually doing something. Let's throw a debug message in there. String it. Width, collision width, player collision width. And player collision height. Just to make sure these values are kind of what I expect them to be. Okay. Way to go, GameMaker. This code, left minus right, is actually wrong. That'll teach me to copy and paste without looking. Guess someone on the GameMaker site should fix that, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to fix it for me. Here's the problem. Let's do the creation. had I not just taken it on good faith that this worked, I would have realized that left minus right is going to give me a negative number. I need right minus left, because right is bigger than left. So if anyone has free time and wants to give the yo-yo game guys a little heads up, that'll probably do it. There we go. Now I'm actually moving 7 pixels left and up, so I can throw that factor back in. 3 was way too much probably, but let's try double. So double the collision width, double the collision height in terms of movement. Yeah, the up-down dodge is pretty crazy. There's no animation or something, so it's just jumping in a frame, which is no good, but that's a visual thing we can fix later. The good thing is that no matter what, the player is going to be able to dodge bullets. Left, right, probably should separate this out actually. Let me do vertical factor. And horizontal factor. Because even if logically it works fine because of the way collision is, the collision's very narrow but very tall, it just doesn't look right, so I should split those out. Just so I can have fine control over how the game is. The more control I have, the easier it's going to be to get things to look right. To collision height and collision width. And I just need to replace that stuff in here, which means going back into parentheses land to change these things. Better make sure I don't accidentally erase a parentheses. Oof. Now, let's see, dodge, vertical. Let's just replace the Y ones first. Being very careful not to get rid of one of these parentheses by mistake. And being very careful not to do this in any of the X ones, which are these. And horizontal factor. So there should be 6 of these altogether. Considering there are only 2 directions that don't involve horizontal movement, up and down, logically. Okay. So now the horizontal dodge should be a little wider. The up down will be a little shorter too. Yeah, and I definitely feel pretty safe dodging out of the way of bullets, regardless of where it's coming at me. Let's see, it looks like the only diagonal that seems to be working is the upper right one. Now that's working. It's just when I'm moving it doesn't seem to be working. That's interesting. That's probably not a bug from today per se, but if you'll notice, if I'm moving up and right and press space, I duck properly, and it even slides properly. But up's fine, right's fine, down's fine. But if I'm moving down and right, if a ghost doesn't get in the way, if I'm moving down and right, duck doesn't do anything. So that's kind of an interesting bug. But once I fix that, if I can fix it, that should cover me. So left, up, down, right. There's not really anything in there that can be done. It's just if expression dodge space. That should be fine. I mean, it should be setting dodge to 1. Interesting. I'll bet it's something. It's not in here, but I'll bet it's something with ifs and else ifs, where I'm checking left and right before, and I'll bet that's in here. So my problem is probably these ifs and else ifs in here. If it's right, if it's up and right, it works. So this one works. This one does not. So up and left is not working. Why would that be the case? Just really quick, I want to make sure it's coming into here properly. And I'm going to see a debug message in this window here if it's proper, because every time I dodge it's showing the collision width and height. So assuming it's registering the dodge, it should give me a debug message. It's not even registering the dodge. It is in that case. So it's not coming into that code at all for the other direction. So it's not a problem in here. It's not a problem in here. It's a problem before here. Clear dodge is 0, that's fine. Space should always just set dodge input to true, dodge to 1. Wow, that is very interesting. I guess I should probably throw a debug message in here too, just to make sure it's coming in here. Just dodge. Okay. No, it is not registering that at all. Interesting. Interesting. Is it something to do with space being down here while any key is up here? No, it shouldn't matter. The order in these shouldn't matter. If keyboard check, player direction, that's fine. PL dodge is equal to 0, so it's probably not registering the dodge. Just in case. I don't think it matters, but maybe what I should do is change this if a little bit, just to be on the safe side. So if PL dodge input is equal to true, change the order in here a little bit. Okay, let's see how that is. So I just switched the order around. Another parentheses thing waiting to haunt me. So if the player is dodging and accepting dodge input and any key is being pushed, then go through this. Otherwise, I may not even need this else, to be honest. Yeah, I don't think I need this else. PL direction is that. In fact, since I am changing direction, I don't need PL dodge in there anymore. I don't think that makes a difference, but let's just see if something did change. And I'll catch up to the chat here. Are you going to force a stand at the end of the dodge or keep the duck at the end? I'm definitely going to force a stand because that's part of the strategy of the game to not dodge too soon. Right now, it's animation-wise, it's not giving enough information to the player to let them make a good decision on this stuff, but yeah, this is weird. Up and right and dodge works, but none of the other diagonals work. That is crazy. Okay, I need to turn off the enemy shooting and give myself some more lives. Yeah, up works, left works. Up and left doesn't work. Huh. Wow, that one's got me. That one really has me. That is weird. Why would that be the case? Because it's not even coming into this part, which means these aren't true. Currently dodging stop movement. Yeah, that's fine. Maybe I'll add dodge checks in here. I'll try adding them in here. So that I can pull them out of that other spot. Down. Okay, so it should only change the speed if the character's not dodging. So in the step, I don't have to worry about the dodge state. I just have to worry about dead and hurt or charging. Let's see if that makes a difference. I don't think it will because it's definitely something with the key input. I guess I shouldn't have done that. Didn't make a difference anyway, so I'll just put that stuff back. It was worth a shot. And just to satisfy my paranoia, I'm going to do this. Okay. So I'll put that back. Get rid of this extra stuff that I added in here. I'm sure it's going to be... Oh, I was using not. Well, alright, well that's why that wasn't working. Never mind. Let me put this stuff back. You gotta pay attention to that little checkbox down there. I just want to make sure I exhaust as many options as I can, in case one of them is actually the problem. And let's go back into here. Get rid of that again. Okay, let's try it out. Like I said, I don't think it makes a difference, but just in case. Yeah, it's still not working in the diagonal directions, and it's still weird, so I'll just get rid of that. Okay, so there should be no horizontal or vertical movement if the player's dodging. That's fine as it was. Get rid of all this extra stuff. Okay. It's got to be something with the key order. Like ifs and else's somewhere, but it's not coming in here, so it's not this. It's not even registering the dodge. But why would it only allow me to go up and right? Problems like this, always the worst. If nothing worked, it would actually be more comforting. The fact that only one of the diagonal directions is working is extremely disturbing. Pandabits mentions, is there any way to do a direct comparison of the code? Is it a sum error? Yeah, it's possible that it's a sum error, but the thing that kind of has me going against checking inside of where is it? Inside of here is that it's not even registering this space. For some reason, it's not even registering the fact that the player is hitting space when they hit up and left at the same time. But it doesn't seem to be like a total number of keys. Like, you know, my first thought was maybe GameMaker can only handle 2 keys at once or something, which would be really weird. I doubt it would be that way, but, you know, there's always that chance. But because ducking up and to the right works, that means it can register up, right, and space at the same time. Dodge input's true. Dodge. Wow, that one's kind of blowing me away. Any key dodge movement. I mean, I can understand maybe it doesn't know that the space is there when it gets to here, but it should know after. Able to move, reflect that in the player direction, that's fine. And this shouldn't be it anyway, because I was, if it's an if-else problem, then probably the first thing gets checked and other things don't. Is there something else hidden inside of this code that is screwing me up? Player dodge to player dodge cooldown +1, that's fine. If dodging, no vertical or horizontal speed, that's fine. Reset the speed to 0 at the beginning of the step, that's fine. Welcome to Japan. It is election week, so if you can hear that truck rolling in the background advertising someone, that's what that is. Noise pollution laws in Japan are a little different than other spots around the world. That's just about laser direction. Wow, okay, this might just be something I have to look over the coming week or something, because I'm not coming up with any solutions at the moment. It's only letting me move positive X and Y. Oops, let me get rid of that. Doing that, it's registering that there's any key being pushed. And it's letting me change my direction. So it's still registering keys properly. Yeah, I mean, Panda Bits, I know exactly what you're talking about with like some errors and things like that, and that's what I wish it was. But like for example, right now, I'm in the corner pushing. Well, I guess it's kind of weird. Up into the corner right now, and there's. Let's see if I can get it right. Let me move the mouse over to it. Over here in this message box, I have it set to say dodge whenever I hit the space bar. It doesn't have to do any calculations or anything. It's just when I hit the space bar, it should show the text dodge. But when I'm squeezing into the corner like this, so I've got up and left pressed at the same time, and I hit space, it doesn't even give me that dodge message. So it's something to do with the input. I guess I could move the message out here. Spacebar. If this message doesn't show, then I really don't know what's going on. Hopefully spacebar at least shows, because that gives me a shot at doing this. So now there's no ifs or anything. If I'm holding the spacebar down, it should show that message. And it is not. Okay, so this is probably actually, could be a game maker bug, I don't know. I don't think it's something with my stuff, because it's literally not registering the spacebar when I'm pushing up into the left, down into the left, or down into the right. But it is registering the spacebar when I'm up into the right. So I'll go to all four corners just to show you. It doesn't even give me the spacebar message. Doesn't give me the spacebar message. Doesn't give me the spacebar message. Up it does. Right it does. Up right it does. Down yes. Left yes. So there might be a bug in the input stuff inside of GameMaker itself. That's That's a possibility. Don't usually like to think that way, but I really don't see why anything else would happen. Because I don't think there's anything that would clear out the fact that I'm hitting the space bar. I mean, I could try to do something like this. How about if true is equal to false, which is always going to be false. So now nothing inside of any key should happen. None of the processing in any key should happen. So just to make sure that's not a problem, yeah, obviously the player direction and everything is screwed up because I have any keys not actually doing anything anymore. But even doing that, it's not registering the space bar, because if it did, you would see space over here. So I think it literally is, I think, a bug inside of GameMaker Studio. Make sure I delete the right stuff. So what do I do with that? So it can't figure out that I'm hitting space, left, and up at the same time. Yeah, there's not really any way to get around that. I'll keep these debug messages for now, and I'll look around on message boards and stuff just to see if anyone else is having the same problem. Ziaga in the chat mentions, stupid question, but it's not your keyboard, is it? My keyboard locks up when I hold down, left, and space. Yeah, oh, then never mind. No way, that's a hardware issue. I guess I could check outside of GameMaker. How would I check that? Maybe I can come up... That's actually a really good point. Maybe it is the keyboard. My keyboard physically can't register those different inputs. So let's see, how would I do that? What's something where I can check if I'm hitting up, left, and space at the same time? Let's throw a bunch of ahs in here. Wonderful tip, by the way, Ziaga. Thank you. Let's fill this out. Get rid of all these extra ones. Okay. So I'm going to try hitting up and left and space at the same time and see what happens. Up and right. Up and left. I think you got it, Ziaga. It is a keyboard issue. Interesting. Can't use Notepad since it will only accept one key at a time. Yeah, I do realize that, but let's see what. But it was registering spaces okay when it was going to the upper right. Obviously, it stopped the directional input when it was doing that. But just in case, I don't think WordPad can accept multiple keys at the same time either. But let's try it. But I think it is a hardware issue in terms of like the way the keyboard prioritizes key inputs. Like for example, if I hit up, right, and space at the same time, I get a space out of it. Not only do I move up and right, but I do get a space out of it. Because there's probably like, just microseconds between inputs. To me, I'm hitting them all at the same time, but there's probably just that little bit of lag. But if I go down and right and space at the same time, they all kind of cancel out. Unless I'm just not hitting them right at the same time, but spacebar cancels out. So, yeah, so Ziaga had it right. The keyboard that I have, whether it's all keyboards or not, I have no idea. I have to look that up. Let's actually have to remember that. Look that up. Keyboard directional keys and space at same time. Okay, so here we go. I'm sure this is the right answer. This is a hardware limitation of your keyboard. Unfortunately, the only solution is that you must purchase a better keyboard that does not have this limitation. To be more specific, in order to save money, keyboard manufacturers often put many keys on the same circuit of sorts within the wiring of the keyboard. This prevents multiple keys in the same region of the keyboard from being pressed simultaneously. Sometimes it even prevents more than two keys at all from across the whole keyboard being pressed at once. But often Shift, Control, and Alt keys are not in this limitation, obviously, because you wouldn't be able to capitalize letters or anything. So you can hold Shift and press two other keys at once and it'll still work fine. So, to test this out, there's a really easy way to test this. Really easy way to test this. Amazing. Thank you, Ziaga. Never, ever, ever would have thought of that. Because I just assume keyboards know what's going on, but of course they're on a circuit, and every little, wire back to the output controller is going to cost money. So obviously they're going to want to cut down on that as much as possible. And most people don't want to be pushing like, P, O, and I at the same time. So very interesting. But the way I can figure this out is they gave me kind of a hint. Control, Alt, Shift are usually on a separate circuit. So if I change this, for example, to, let's go with Alt. Let's put all this stuff in Alt. And I'll just leave the one in space for now. So now Alt is an alternative way to duck. If this does get me working, then that's interesting. If it did. Nope. Spacebar, spacebar. Down and right's working. I'll turn off the enemy firing here. Oh no, okay, up and left should actually work. No? Okay. Up and right still works. Down and right now works. Down and left now works. But up and left doesn't work. So I must have like the world's strangest keyboard or whatever, but what's interesting about this is, yeah, one solution might be to go out and buy a new keyboard, but it's actually a good thing that I have a cheap keyboard and ran into this problem because a lot of people out there are going to have cheap keyboards. So if I fix the problem by buying better hardware, that means, yeah, the game looks fine on my system, but when someone with a cheap keyboard tries to run it, they're not going to be able to duck properly. It's going to look like a bug when they're able to dodge in, one of 3 directions, but not this direction for some reason. Wow, so the left, let's see, it's down and left works, down and right works, up and right works, but up and left and Alt can't register at the same time. I'm trying to picture how this circuit even works. Like, there must be, why would, I could understand if like up and right and down and right worked, but down and up and left didn't work, but it's just that combination of those 3 keys that's causing a problem, even with Alt. Let's try Shift. Let's see if that's any different. That is crazy. Absolutely crazy. It's a horrible problem, but I'm actually having a blast with this because it's blowing my mind. Let's try Shift. Let's see how that works. Just to make it clear which button I'm pushing in the debug messages here, so that you can see what I'm pushing, because obviously you can't see what's going down on the keyboard there. Alright, let's see what happens with Shift. Get it out of the way so you can see the messages. Up and right works, down and right works, down and left works, up and left works. Okay, so to sum up, if you're going to have a player in a situation where they need to hit 2 directional buttons and another key at the same time, make it shift. Well, not make it shift, but test it out first. So let's sum this up. This is the weirdest thing in the world, but spacebar and up and right. Okay. Spacebar down and right. Not okay, at least on my keyboard. Alt. In this case, that was okay, and that was okay, but up and left were not okay. For shift, all 4 are okay, at least on my keyboard. Okay, so let me catch up to the chat because I'm sure that was blowing some of your minds too, but let me see. Kind of scrolled out on me there. Okay, I just need to look at the chat over here because it's scrolling too fast on my my laptop. So let's see. Getting back here. Hi to myself, by the way. You want an anti-ghosting keyboard, by the way, if you want to minimize that. Yeah, and I was in disbelief myself. Time to invest in a Steelers or a Razor. And yeah, great idea, Zega. Working on a game in C# last week and couldn't figure out why I couldn't hold W, R, and P at the same time. And it was actually your keyboard. Okay. What if you set keys that execute the code anyway? It shouldn't happen with Alt on any keyboard, like your numpad. Alt should never lock up on any keyboard. Any modifier key shouldn't do that. Yeah, I was kind of surprised that Alt didn't work with up and left. That's really weird, but if it happened on my keyboard, which is, I will admit, a very cheap keyboard, yes, definitely, then it's possible that you have to keep that in mind with other people's keyboards. And Ziaga mentions, got to go to work. Good luck with the game. Thank you. And definitely follow and keep up with you. Thank you. Ziaga, I'm not sure if you're already gone or not, but yeah, definitely. If you're making a game, let me get rid of this weird like tunnel universe I've got going. If you're making a game, definitely let me know about it. And, if you've got it up somewhere, I'd definitely be curious about it, and I'd like to follow back or whatever if I can. Catch up to the rest of the chat here. And Pandabits, thank you for covering me on the time. I wasn't keeping up with the chat because I was debugging, obviously, but great. I'm definitely glad to have someone else stopping by. Looking forward to seeing you again next week if you show up. So, summing up, be careful about multiple keys on the keyboard at the same time. For now, I guess I'll just keep dodge on shift, which is not ideal, because spacebar just feels more like a dodge kind of button. But, another solution would be to use the numpad, so that 7 is a diagonal, 9 is a diagonal, which a lot of games do. But, some people just prefer the directional buttons, so I don't want that to be the solution, but maybe I'll just have to have that in configuration or something. But problem solved, and that is the important thing. Thank you guys for sticking with me on that. Definitely going over time here, so I'm going to wrap up. Didn't get any of the sprites done because there was a lot of debugging stuff, but did get the rolling dodge done this episode. Not really a roll, but a sliding dodge, I guess. Did get the mechanic done, just have to worry about the fact that there's limitations on multiple key input. I'll have to think of ways to get around that in the future. But I'll save my notes here. And I wrote down my time so I don't have to think about it every time. But thank you all for watching the game development show. Thank you, Ziaga. Thank you, PandaBits. Great comments. Thank you to all of you guys who are just watching. You know, I don't mind at all if you're lurking. And like I said earlier in the show, if you want to lurk, that's cool. I don't look up your names or anything like that. I don't start to call you out and try to get you involved in the chat or anything, because I know sometimes you just want to be doing something else and watching, you know, at the same time and not worry about that. So I'm totally cool with that. But definitely appreciate, you know, when you do jump in the chat. You can catch past episodes and this one eventually, probably in a couple of days, over at youtube.com Blue Tengu Studio. I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint. The thing that takes the time putting these videos up on YouTube is the fact that I time code them so that you can jump around the episodes. If you're not worried about time codes, you can usually see the video before I officially announce it if you go over to the playlist, because it'll be at the very end of the playlist, because I usually put it there right away once it gets up. That usually happens on the weekend, but it's usually about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday by the time I actually get those time codes in there and officially announce anything on Twitter or whatever. So if you really do want to see episodes early, that's a way you can do it. If you are watching this later on YouTube, come drop by the live show we do every week on Twitch TV Blue Tengu. The times are, you know, for North America, 3 to 5 Pacific, 4 to 6 Mountain, 5 to 7 Central, 6 to 8 Eastern. If you're in the UK, those times are all Friday, sorry. If you're in the UK, it's Friday from 11 at night to 1 in the morning Saturday. If you're here in Japan with me, it's 8 to 10 Saturday mornings. If you're in Australia, it starts anywhere from 8 to 10, depending on where you live, and usually runs to 2 hours and change. Today it was 2.5 hours. And about 11 in New Zealand it starts on Saturday morning. We always announce what we're doing on Twitter, so follow btengu to keep track of when the live show starts or episodes go up on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch or YouTube. That's another way to do it, because I think YouTube, because I have it connected to Twitch here, should announce if I'm actually live streaming. And of course Twitch is going to announce if I'm on. And of course you can see what we're up to anytime over at www.bluetengu.com. You know, all those links are down, let's see, there. And thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. PandaBits, thank you very much, and I appreciate the encouragement, and definitely appreciate you dropping by every week. It definitely makes this worth doing. And good luck on your test, and I hope you have a good vacation if you're ready to jump out on it. And for the rest of you too, I hope you have some good holiday plans in store. For those of you who are already going on break, I hope you enjoy it. And I will be here next week. And there we go. I will see you guys next time.